Good morning. To our guests, welcome to Polar. Thank you for joining us on this celebratory day. My name is Rosanna Imholt. I joined Polar as a young, wide-eyed engineering intern in the summer of 1997. There were many days that summer that I overslept in my Dinkytown apartment and arrived here with barely brushed hair. But each day ended with the knowledge that this place was the right match for both my curiosity and passion for sustainability. Over the years, my responsibilities evolved to include implementing environmental management systems to ensure Polar's compliance with regulatory requirements, serving as the environmental gatekeeper for process and chemistry changes, and managing the best team of health and safety professionals, and most recently, learning the ins and outs of applying for federal funding opportunities. I continue to serve as a proud champion for Polar's sustainability initiatives, including those aimed at water conservation and greenhouse gas emission reductions. For the latter, Polar recently transitioned its operations to be powered 100% by renewable energy. We are very proud of this significant environmental improvement. Over 25 years later, and with more frequently brushed hair, my passion for sustainability remains. I look forward to leading environmental improvements as Polar embarks on this transformative and exciting next chapter. Polar reached this milestone today with the help of many, including the Minnesota CHIPS Coalition that consists of over 70 partners within the state's semiconductor ecosystem. This process involved unprecedented collaboration at local, regional, state, and federal levels. And we are truly honored to have many distinguished guests in attendance today that represent those key collaborations, including the Director of White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, Dr. Klobuchar, Undersecretary of Commerce, Dr. Locascio, Senator Klobuchar, Senator Smith, Congresswoman McCollum, Governor Walz, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, and Mayor Busse. It's a privilege and pleasure to introduce our first speaker, the Director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, Dr. Klobuchar.
Thank you so much, Rosanna. Thank you for all that you've done at Polar, and I just want to say your hair actually looks fantastic. Hello, everyone. What a pleasure to be here, right here in Bloomington with all of you. On behalf of President Biden, it is my great pleasure to congratulate Polar and the people of Minnesota for this big announcement today. And I want to thank Senator Klobuchar, Senator Smith, Representative McCollum, others in the Minnesota delegation. They did the work that got the CHIPS and Science Act through Congress. Thank you. They worked closely with President Biden. It was a priority of his from the beginning. They got it on his desk for his signature. I also want to thank the CHIPS for America team at the U.S. Department of Commerce. Undersecretary Lori Locascio is here. They went to work in a really focused and professional manner to implement CHIPS and Science. And I want to thank the governor and the lieutenant governor and Mayor Busse as well for all the work that they did to get us here, because it truly took everyone coming together with Polar for this really wonderful moment. And today, of course, we are announcing a $120 million federal CHIPS investment in Polar. Congrats. That funding is catalyzing $525 million of private capital and funds from state and local entities. All of that is to expand this Polar fab right here in Bloomington. Now, I want to tell you a story. If we had all known each other 40 years ago, you would have found me bent over, typing away, putting together my PhD thesis, and my subject was semiconductors. It was early in this industry's history. We thought the prospects were great, and they were, because in the intervening years, look at what semiconductors have really come to be able to do. Look at our cell phones and our computers, these amazing new AI systems. Look at the power electronics and the LED lights that are going to make our clean energy future possible. Look at our defense systems that can see farther and decide faster than anyone else's anywhere on planet Earth. None of these capabilities would have been possible without semiconductors. Semiconductors made every one of these capabilities possible. So that's the good news, but a few other things happened along the way as well, because while these advances were happening, the semiconductor manufacturing that started here in America first globalized and then got very dangerously concentrated in just one part of the world. And that has enormous implications for our economy, everything from jobs to supply chains. It has huge implications for our national security, and over time this became a very serious issue. And I don't know about you, I think we all saw the shortages that happened during the pandemic. In my home, our washer and dryer died. We needed a new pair of appliances, and we couldn't get the ones that we wanted because the chips weren't available for these appliances. You know, it's just a minor inconvenience for us, but then my mind went to the manufacturing lines that had been stalled, the jobs that were lost, and you started to see what the real impact was. Now, with President Biden's CHIPS and Science Act, we are turning this situation around. With the incentives from the CHIPS Act, just like the one that we're talking about here today, we're building the semiconductor fabs that we need right here in America. That's how we're going to win today. And with the research and development part of the CHIPS Act, we're also doing the work to make sure that we can win tomorrow as well. This particular announcement that we're talking about here at Polar today, it's going to enable Polar to double its U.S. production capacity for the sensor chips and the power chips that are made here. That's going to happen within just 2 years. And of course, these semiconductors are the ones that are essential to appliances, but also to our power systems and our grids and our defense systems. So they tie directly to our everyday lives and our national security. Part of this announcement means that Polar will be creating more than 160 new Minnesota jobs, building on their partnership with the Normandale Community College. Under President Biden's leadership, we are writing a new chapter in semiconductor manufacturing right here in America. And when we build in America, we strengthen the supply chain of chips that feeds so many other industries. We strengthen our national security, and we strengthen global security as well. And while we're doing that, and the way we do that is through good-paying jobs that support families. These are the kinds of jobs that change people's lives, and that's what it's all about. President Biden is working every day to bring us all together so that we can make sure that America remains the land of possibilities. And here in the land of possibilities, this is how we do big things. Thanks so much, and I'll turn it over to Undersecretary Locascio.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here up on stage with Governor Walz, Senator Klobuchar, Senator Smith, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, Mayor Busse, Representative McCollum, and of course the President and COO of the company Polar, Surya Iyer. It's so great to be here and see so many faces out here in the room ready to celebrate. And I want to start by thanking Polar for hosting us today so we can announce a historic investment for the state of Minnesota. Woo! And thank you to Secretary Raimondo for her leadership in implementing the CHIPS and Science Act, a critical piece of President Biden's Investing in America agenda. And I cannot express how grateful we are to Senator Klobuchar and the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee for pushing this thing ahead and over the line, and Senator Smith, of course, for your support in this incredible piece of legislation as well. This is what led us here to today, so thank you. Thank you. So we are proud to announce that the Department of Commerce and Polar have signed a preliminary memorandum of terms to provide up to $120 million to modernize and expand Polar's facility right here in Bloomington. This proposed deal hits one of the core priorities of the implementation of the CHIPS and Science Act. We are making taxpayer dollars go as far as possible while crowding in private and state investment to create jobs and secure our supply chains and bolster manufacturing here in Minnesota. Now, our goal is to catalyze private investment to revitalize American semiconductor industry. And with this proposed CHIPS investment, coupled with private and state incentives, thanks to your leadership here, this is an incredible day for the Biden and Harris administration, as we are allowing Polar to become a US-based independent foundry, meaning you will be able to expand your customer base and create a secure domestic supply chain of power semiconductors right here in America's heartland. So President Biden signed the CHIPS and Science Act into law in August 2022 with the goal of strengthening U.S. supply chains, creating good-paying jobs, and advancing U.S. competitiveness. With this proposed funding deal, we are accomplishing all of this. Now, during the COVID-19 pandemic shortages, these types of chips were among the most acute bottlenecks, which disrupted critical industries, including the automotive, healthcare, aerospace, and defense industries. I just want to close by giving you a big thank you to the incredible Polar employees all gathered here today. Secretary Raimondo and I are so excited that you are driving the achievements that made today possible, and we are deeply grateful for your ingenuity, your teamwork, and your spirit of determination that are the hallmarks of the U.S. semiconductor industry. So thank you. Big shout out to all of you.
Well done. Good morning, everyone. Surya and I'll segue on that, and to the Polar team that's here. Congratulations, first of all, but more importantly, thank you. I think this facility and the folks who are here embody the best of what Minnesota has to offer. Forward-leaning, visionary, collaborative, effective, and making contributions, as you've heard, that will not only benefit Bloomington and Minnesota or this country, but globally. And I think that's how we see ourselves, whether it's dating back to Norman Borlaug and the pacemaker, or what we're doing right here. And I think the folks in this room know before there was Silicon Valley, there was Bloomington, Minnesota, and most of these things were done here. So the pipeline of engineers coming from our great University of Minnesota and other institutions, but this collaboration. So Surya, thank you on behalf of Minnesota. And looking around, I think this is what all of us hope the way things are supposed to work. It's great to have our federal partners here from the White House, Science and Tech, from Commerce, and we've got our federal partners that you're going to hear from in just a minute that went and did what we're supposed to do, worked in the democracy and debated and had a vision for what we should do and collectively what we can do together and pass these important pieces of legislation. That's the job that we all wanted to see get done. Those are the things that we wanted to see partnering. And it's hard. This is hard work. But they got it done. And the state of Minnesota, we understood our part in this. I want to thank Commissioner Verlick and his team at DEED. These are the folks that put together a package and said, look, Minnesota can't just live on our laurels. We have to compete all across the world. And I remember when we set out in this parking lot after this bill was signed, and Surya and his team and others in here in the CHIPS Coalition said, well, we want to take part in some of that money. Our speeches were interrupted by planes flying over, taking off and landing at North America's best airport 3 years running, by the way, from the infrastructure piece of this. And it all ties together. We saw an announcement coming from the federal government long ago with the Blotnick Bridge being replaced to keep the port of Duluth and our exports flowing. Bridges down in Austin, Minnesota, where we're doing research into cancer research at the Hormel Institute in conjunction with the Mayo Clinic. This is what we do together. Setting out here, Mayor of Bloomington, by the way, we come here a lot, so well done. That's well done. So we see county commissioners, we see city council, we see greater MSP, we see the groups that collectively came together that understood local, state, federal, public-private partnerships, all for the ability to be able to contribute to things that we know, as you heard, protects our national security, creates good paying jobs, and leans us into the future. So I have to tell you, this is an exciting announcement. Yes, it's going to be more jobs. Yes, it's investment here. But people are doing this in Minnesota because of the culture that's created here, because of our reputation for being collaborative and leaning forward and welcoming folks to come here and say this is a place where we can achieve those dreams. So I'm just incredibly excited. It's a great time of year in the spring to be incredibly optimistic, which gives me the chance to humble brag off to Senator Klobuchar that yes, I did catch a walleye on Saturday, by the way, so for the first time, so that was great. But I would say this, our federal partners have been absolutely fantastic. Their office and their office staff that's been here, always collaboratively working with us, understanding what the state matches need to be, understanding what things need to be done, and helping us deconflict. And to have 3 of the most effective members of the United States Congress with us today and being in Minnesota doesn't, it's not by chance that we're getting this award. It's because of hard work. With that, Senator Klobuchar.
Well, thank you so much, Governor. Thank you, Surya, for inviting us. You look great in front of our new flag there. Thank you to my colleague, Senator Smith, and to Representative McCollum. Dr. Lucasio, I think you're going to find out this is a great investment right here in Minnesota. And also, thank you so much to Dr. Klobuchar for her work. We're working on a bunch of stuff together in my role on the Commerce Committee, and it's great to see her here. We thank President Biden for his leadership nationally. Thank you locally to our great mayor here in Bloomington, Tim. We actually were with Dean Phillips, a congressman for this area, a few months ago. We did an event here on semiconductor chips, and I thank Dean for his support for this legislation as well. I thank everyone from the Minnesota CHIPS Coalition who worked with our office, the Department of Employment and Economic Investment, and of course Polar. Could we see their employees out there? Do you guys want to raise your hands? There they are. Incredible work. Thank you. I like the 2 guys in the suits here raising their hand too in the front. But thank you, everyone. I could just see the pride when we walked in this facility and in your work. And I note that your mayor here is wearing Polar Star socks because I love the name Polar. It couldn't be a better company to get an award. So Polar is getting this game-changing grant to supercharge semiconductor manufacturing in our state. With this funding, they're going to be able to double the manufacturing capacity of their facility to better compete with China, invest in cutting-edge technology, break into new markets, expand their tech and engineering workforce by 20%, and double the U.S. production capacity of sensor and power chips within 2 years. Last year, Secretary Raimondo joined me in Bloomington to meet with some of our great leaders at Polar and other world-class semiconductor manufacturers. We talked about strengthening our workforce, R&D, importance of bringing, which you've heard from our previous speakers, the chip production home. And home to us means right home here at Polar. Right now, only 12% of chips are manufactured in the U.S. That's down from 37% in the 1990s. As we know, Minnesota traditionally has been home to a lot of chip and technology production. We're a med tech hub. We love that. But way back, we were there at the beginning. And this is going to allow us to regain our U.S. and world dominance. That is our plan. As was pointed out by the doctor, chips are in everything, right? From refrigerators to planes to phones to medical devices. So making these chips at home really matters. And I hope our great workers that are here today think about that. You have a job to do, you have quality to uphold for the company, but you also actually are doing the job for our country. You are upholding our national security and making sure that people see that America is back when it comes to manufacturing around the world. This bill, which originally came out of our Commerce Committee with Senator Cantwell's leadership, invests in semiconductor production by empowering companies like Polar to build, expand, and modernize, building our technology and engineering workforce. We're looking at a projected shortfall right now of 300,000 engineers and 90,000 skilled technicians in the U.S. by 2030. So you can see why getting more people, getting kids into this area. I don't know how many times I've said if we're not going to have a shortage of sports marketing degrees in our country, thereby pissing off every parent of a kid with a sports marketing degree. But we are going to have a shortage of engineers and scientists and doctors and nurses and technicians. So you guys made the right decision. In Minnesota, we know the value of this investment. We get that what it's going to mean not just to our state, but to our country. The top-notch universities we have, like the University of Minnesota, the visit that we did to Normandale recently, in terms of all the people that are getting trained there. As a state that brought the world everything from the Post-it note to the pacemaker, we know that today's investments in research becomes tomorrow's world-changing tech developers. And I'm confident that this landmark investment is going to help not just our state, but our country. So we're really excited about this grant today. With that, I want to thank and bring up to the stage my colleague, Tina Smith, who worked with us to get the CHIPS Act across the finish line. And I am so grateful to have a delegation that gets that this is about jobs, yes, but it's also about our supply chains, it's about our future, it's about our national security. I give you my colleague, Tina Smith.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Well, I want to just start by adding my thanks to Surya and all of the incredible team at Polar for hosting us here today. And to Mayor Busse, thanks for hosting us here in Bloomington. Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, and to the team from the White House and Commerce, thank you so much for coming to beautiful Minnesota on Mother's Day to appreciate how great we are. I want to particularly just call out my colleague, Senator Klobuchar, who serves on the Commerce Committee. So she was right in the thick of it as we were putting together the CHIPS and Science Act. And that mattered not only to putting together an outstanding piece of legislation, broadly bipartisan piece of legislation with the Biden administration, but also because of Amy's deep understanding of the economic strengths and the human strengths of this state. She is so well positioned to make sure that now Minnesota is able to fully capitalize on this incredible piece of legislation. So thank you so much, Senator Klobuchar, for your leadership on this legislation. So today we are celebrating a major step forward in Minnesota's future and the future of American manufacturing. This is a big deal. In 2022, when President Biden signed the Bipartisan CHIPS and Science Act into law, he was looking towards a future where America is leading again. And American workers, businesses, and communities, just like this community in Bloomington, are more secure, more competitive, and have more opportunity. And so we start with semiconductors, which are the brains of modern electronics and which power everything from medical devices and computing to our national defense, clean energy, transportation, and probably the coffee machine and refrigerator in your kitchen. Semiconductor chips are ubiquitous, and we invented them in America. But here's the thing. Today, we only manufacture about 10% of the chips that we need here at home, and none of that in essential advanced chips. So that is what the CHIPS and Science Act is changing, and you can see the results right here in Bloomington. With this project, we are building on America's and Minnesota's strengths, our talented, hardworking people, our excellent education system, and our entrepreneurial and innovative business sector. So today we are celebrating that Polar Semiconductor is receiving up to $120 million in federal support. But it is important to understand that that federal support is leveraging state support and also significant private investment to double the chips production here over the next 2 years. Well done, Polar. Well done, everybody, for that. This means over 160 new manufacturing and construction jobs and more opportunities for Minnesotans. Makes for a stronger supply chain and for not only Minnesota but the entire nation. So I really see Polar as a model for the entire country, and I am very proud to stand with all of you today to make this significant investment in Minnesota and our future. And with this project, we are rebuilding American manufacturing, we are honing our competitive edge, and we are building a future right here in Minnesota. Now, Minnesota is also blessed to have incredible, strong leadership in the U.S. House of Representatives with the powerful voice of U.S. Representative Betty McCollum. Please join me in welcoming Betty.
Wow, today's a great day, and I can see the smile on all of your faces. So once again, we wouldn't be here without all the fantastic workers here at Polar. You made it happen. Give yourselves a round of applause. And what a crowd we have here. We have people from the White House, the Department of Commerce, the governor, lieutenant governor, our two fabulous senators. Bloomington, Your Honor, thank you for welcoming me from the other side of the river in St. Paul. Why are we all here? Because this announcement, it is a really, really big deal for our state. Now, Senator Klobuchar, you've heard how she worked in Commerce, and I have to tell you, I'll talk about my role as, at the time I was the defense chair for the Appropriations Committee, and we were holding our breath that you would get it over the line. Thank you so much. We were. And as the Biden administration officials pointed out, and they worked really hard to get Congress to get this through the finish line too, President Biden knew how important this was. I couldn't be more prouder of Minnesota and the way that we're able to announce these advancements in resources here for Polar to take advantage of. As I said, in Congress, I have the opportunity to be now the ranking member of the House Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. When the CHIPS Act was passed, I was the chair. And I knew firsthand how important it was to our national security that our country get this legislation signed into law. We have lived through unprecedented disruptions in our supply chain. We all personally experienced it, but let me tell you, not only was our economy experiencing it, our national security was experiencing it as well. As been pointed out, the chips are in everything. And when President Biden came into office, he knew he had an opportunity to rectify the problem before us. We weren't manufacturing chips here in the United States. And basically, that just brings it down to why it's so important that we do that. We can make the necessary investments by expanding chip manufacturing, building better supply chains, investing in workforce development for jobs here at home. Now, this doesn't happen just because the three of us worked really hard to get this law passed. Another step had to happen. It took leaders like Governor Walz and the Minnesota Senate and Minnesota House to prioritize state investments to support the microchip industry in the Minnesota Forward Fund. In the law, it required a match. I'm a former state legislator. We were terrible at doing matches. Well, these two are fabulous at doing matches. So, we now have the opportunity, and I am so excited about it, the opportunity to make not only Minnesota vibrant, strong, and a brighter future for our children, but also you're creating an opportunity by making the United States vibrant, strong, a better opportunity for our children. And most importantly, I'm just going to take it back to the committee I'm on. protecting democracy. That's what you're doing here. So thank you so much. Now, as I pointed out, we didn't do this alone. It took deed. I know it took deed. And being a former legislator in the state, it took the state legislatures, but it wouldn't have happened without the leadership of these two individuals. Please welcome Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan.
Well, thank you so much, Congresswoman. Good morning. I am thrilled to be here today, and I know you've heard from a lot of us, but I hope that just really communicates how enthusiastic we are for this incredible commitment from the Biden-Harris administration and to be here at Polar. Thank you to all of the workers, the leaders here, for really helping us to shine a light on the good work that is happening right here in Minnesota in the heartland of our country. This is an exciting day for Minnesota's economy and workforce today for generations to come. This is also what good governance looks like. And when we think about President Biden and Vice President Harris's historic CHIPS and Science Act, it's going to make a huge impact right here at Polar. We couldn't be more excited, and it lets us dream about the possibility for a future that is big and bright for Minnesota and this entire region. And when we work together across all levels of government, as you literally can see demonstrated right here behind you, we know that we are creating a state and investing in good paying, high demand jobs, good Minnesota labor that we can be proud of. And this investment and our investment in local economies is just one way that we are making Minnesota the best place to live and work and raise a family. And I know that our colleagues in the Minnesota legislature are hard at work with 1 week left to go in the legislative session. So I want to make sure that I mention this specifically, that Minnesota put forward $75 million. And that matters. That match matters. We heard directly from the White House what was required, and we stepped up, and because of our friends in the legislature, we were able to get it done. So if you're looking for an industry or job that will carry you and our economy far into the future, look no further than right here at Polar. And as you were talking about being an intern here in 1997, I think about my own 11-year-old who's getting ready for middle school, who could also have a future here right at Polar, but a future here because we know that we are making the investments here in Minnesota and across the country. Our future is bright. And right here we have a solid example of what that looks like in action. So thank you so much to the leaders here from the federal delegation, from the White House, the leaders right here at Polar, and local leaders. There's a lot of stuff happening in Bloomington all the time. And so with that, please help me welcome the mayor of Bloomington, Mayor Tim Busse.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Busse. I have the honor and the privilege of serving as the mayor of the city of Bloomington, and the honor and the privilege of welcoming you all here this morning for this fantastic announcement. I'm so very thrilled to be here. Congratulations to Polar. My friend Surya, congratulations. All of you in back, you could be making some noise back there, gang. Well done. You did a great job. I especially want to thank and welcome our representatives from the White House and from Commerce here today, Senators Klobuchar and Smith, Governor Walz. Of course, you're always welcome here. I'm always love to be the second Tim on the podium. That's the best. It's Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, Representative McCollum. Thank you so very much. We here in Bloomington are fortunate to have such a fantastic relationship with our federal and local and state partners on so many different things. As people have said, we've got a lot going on here in Bloomington, and we couldn't do half of it without the support of these people here behind me. So thank you all. We are greatly and deeply appreciated at all times. Never take it for granted, and we really do appreciate everything that you do for us. My only regret, if the water park was a little bit more done, I know what would be next on the agenda this morning. So, you know, put a pin in that, and next time you're here, bring a change of clothes because we could have a good time. So, Our City of Bloomington mission statement, it sits atop our 5-year strategic plan, guides everything that we do here in the City of Bloomington. The mission statement is, our mission statement is, you should know the mission statement a little bit better than that, to cultivate an enduring want to be. To cultivate an enduring and remarkable community where people want to be. Now, like a lot of mission statements, that can get kind of word salad-y. So what I try and do is break it down into some important words. And I think the most important word in that is the word cultivate. Cultivate is an action verb. I like the word cultivate. It means to grow, to nurture, to develop. I'm a gardener. I spent the weekend cultivating. Anybody else spend the weekend cultivating? And I've got the dirt under my fingernails to prove it. If you're a gardener in Minnesota, you understand the need and the importance of cultivation. You need to cultivate. You need to choose the right plants. You need to cultivate the soil. You need to fertilize, weed, water. If you just dig a hole and drop a plant in and expect it to grow here in Minnesota, you're probably not a very good gardener, because that's not cultivation. You've got to spend the time to actually put the work in to grow things in the city of, in the state of Minnesota. It takes time and effort and intentionality to cultivate a garden. It takes time and effort and intentionality to cultivate an enduring and remarkable community where people want to be. And it takes time and intentionality and effort to cultivate a semiconductor industry in the place in the United States where the semiconductor industry was born. And that is what's happening with this. And I applaud President Biden and our Minnesota senators for embracing the importance of cultivation. Their leadership on the CHIPS and Science Act, $52 billion to support and grow an industry, as I said, that started here in Minnesota, is absolutely transformative. Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan and Representative McCollum, everyone at DEED, Commissioner Kevin McKinnon was instrumental in all of this. They understood the importance of cultivation. I remember the early conversations about a state involvement, that state match that was necessary. And I remember hearing more than once from a lot of people, yeah, Minnesota doesn't do that. More than once heard that, Minnesota does not do that. But Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan and our leadership in the state legislature, who are obviously good gardeners, they said, yes, we need to do that. We need to cultivate this, and they got it done. I personally had the pleasure of working closely with and cultivating all of this with some great partners here. Our Minnesota CHIPS Coalition, our friends at Greater MSP, our friends at the Minneapolis-St. Yes. Our friends at the Minneapolis Regional Chamber of Commerce were instrumental in all of this. Obviously, the University of Minnesota, the state university system, all the folks who work in the semiconductor or within or alongside the semiconductor industry in the state of Minnesota that formed the Semiconductor Coalition were instrumental in making sure this all got done. Leaders in the industry, including people like Surya Iyer. And the more I got to know Surya, the more I got to know of his team members, the more I had the chance to better understand their vision. The chance, when I had the opportunity to have lunch in Tokyo with the Sankan leadership as part of Governor Walz's trade mission to Japan, it became crystal clear that these folks, all of you folks at Polar, are cultivating success. And I'm so proud of that and so happy for this. I want to finish by stressing the second most important word in that mission statement, and that's enduring, an enduring and remarkable community. We're here in the South Loop of Bloomington, and we're not far from two streets that are named after former mayors who understand this idea of nurturing and enduring, something that's going to last. Lindau Lane, which runs right in front of Mall of America, is named after Mayor Jim Lindau. Mayor Lindau worked with Governor Rudy Perpich to create and bring Mall of America, and how transformative that has been for the Minnesota economy. We're also very close to Winstead Way. Gene Winstead was the mayor when I started on the council, and he had the vision for this entire South Loop area, knowing full well that it was going to develop as it is developing now after his term as mayor ended. Now, I don't know if either of these mayors are good gardeners or not, but I know that they understood the proverb that blessed are those who plant a tree under whose shade they will never sit. They understood that we need to look for the future. We're playing the long game here, folks. Not just in this project, but many, many others, and we're looking toward the future very excitedly and with a lot of enthusiasm. I think if I play my cards right, a Busse bus stop, that makes sense, right? I mean, that's a no-brainer. That has got to be a no-brainer. To that end, I commit right now that the city of Bloomington will continue to work with Polar and the rest of the semiconductor industry to cultivate those important wraparound pieces of the success of this whole thing. That means housing that people can afford. That means transportation. That means childcare. That means workforce development. We will continue to work with our semiconductor industry to ensure that we cultivate them and we have enduring success within this industry. Thank you all so very much for being here today. It is my pleasure now, if I read the agenda correctly, I get to bring up who I think is probably the man of the hour, Dr. Surya Iyer.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mayor Busse. I'm honored. I have a lot of emotions right now in my head, but the most important one, I'm honored. I'm so grateful that we have this momentous occasion today with such inspiring leaders. Office of Science and Technology Policy, Dr. Arti Prabhakar, Senator Klobuchar, Senator Smith, Congressman McCollum, NIST Director, Dr. Lori Locascio, Governor Walz, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, and our own Mayor, Tim Busse. We thank each of you for supporting high-tech manufacturing and the semiconductor industry in Minnesota and the United States. Thank you very much. To all our honored guests in the audience and Polar employees, thank you for being here at the celebration of this tremendous milestone for Polar. Polar's project is a prime example of what the bipartisan authors of the CHIPS and Science Act envisioned. Domestically produced semiconductors that are essential for national and economic security, rebuild supply chain resilience by onshoring, use CHIPS funding to unlock substantial amount of private investment and state government support in order to create this economy of scale and be cost competitive with our competition in Asia. That was so important. The other pieces of this was to build a strong and vibrant semiconductor ecosystem in the state of Minnesota, create high-paying, family-sustaining jobs, and and attract and train the high-tech workers of the future. At Polar, we took that challenge, and we have stepped up to that challenge. As Minnesotans, we also got together and created this remarkable coalition of semiconductor companies, educational institutions, workforce and training organizations, and together we're going to take on the challenge of addressing the gaps in workforce and access to childcare. Now, this building, Polar, has existed here for over 7 decades, and now we'll embark on this amazing journey, transformation from being a captive manufacturing facility to a brand new and the only US-owned pure play foundry that specializes in sensors and high voltage power semiconductors. So the lack of foundries was identified as one of the biggest gaps in U.S. semiconductor capabilities. And Polar is going to offer substantial capacity and advanced technology access to our automotive, industrial, and commercial customers. And we're going to welcome new customers in aerospace, defense, in optoelectronics, and medical devices. And medical devices, especially because we are the mecca of medical devices here in Minnesota. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank Ian Schillinger and the best CPO deal team at the CHIPS office. I wanted to thank Kevin McKinnon and his team at DEED, Katie McClelland and her team at the Governor's Workforce Development Board, Minnesota Senate President, Mr. Bobby Joe Champion. He's not here. I think the session's on right now. University of Minnesota professor and director of the Nano Center, I think I saw him earlier, Dr. Steve Kester, Peter Frosch, and Amanda Taylor from Greater MSP. Without them, the coalition would not exist. City of Bloomington staff, and many, many others that I cannot, because I'm short on time. I could go on and on. Without partners like them, and without their unwavering support, we would not be here today. The Polar team is geared up to achieve this great transformation of the company and deliver results to our customers, to our investors, Chip Shore, Jay Park, and their teams, who have put their belief in Polar and Polar's potential, and especially to our beloved state and nation, who will invest precious taxpayer dollars into Polar. Thank you again for attending and gracing this event. Please enjoy the fantastic spring day here in Minnesota, 65 degrees and blue skies. And with that, I'll bring this formal program to an end, to a conclusion. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Well done. Congratulations.
Well done. Very excited. Very excited. Senator, thank you for coming.
Thanks, Governor. I ran it in the Obama.